We have a scheduled period of begging you to stay.
Thank you very much.
Roger, will you be able to remain on through your term through June? So that's, nothing's changed there. So we'll do our best to try to keep you on the committee, and like Bob Kraft, keeping welfare on the Patriots. But we respect your situation, and but if anything changes,
I will let you know.
Your impact has been huge, and all of us are grateful for it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So with that, when we turn the meeting over to Dave, and Dave will give us a.
Before I give the plant status, a little bit of a personal note. I know many of you knew Jack very well. Jack's doing okay. I had a conversation with Jack Sunday. He lost a lot of weight. He's gained 20 pounds back. He feels good, and when I spoke to him, he asked me if I would give his regards to all of you at
Thank you.
President. So I thought you'd be glad to hear that.
Yeah. Is he still
in Florida?
Planning on staying down there?
He's retired, staying
permanently.
in Florida.
So
yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
No,
he hasn't sold his place in Hanson yet, but. But anyway, the plant is operating normally. Today the last of the new fuel arrived on site, so all fuel's here. As you know, we're scheduled for refueling in April. Because it's a merchant plant, the exact date is confidential, but it's going to be in April. And we are actively in processing about 1,000 employees for the outage, rented space in the mall to do the in processing. So that's actively going on now. So there are lots of people in town. We met with the selectmen and police chief and fire chief and so forth to let them know that this was going on, so they've been informed. There was some protesters at the plant. I think it was the 12th. They had been scheduled for arraignment in court. They went to court, and then they came down to the plant. Some of them were rearrested, but it was peaceful. It wasn't problematic. But that did occur.
Dave, these are pretty much the same individuals who, I guess it was about a year ago.
Yes.
That the original.
Yes, they're mostly from the Cape, I guess.
Mostly from the Cape.
Yeah. And we're going to have the annual evaluated, graded exercise of the emergency plan is going to be held Thursday. And so then I know MEMA will participate, and the NRC and perhaps FEMA. So that's going on.
Will you be there for that, Dave? Will you be there for that?
If I am, it would be only as an observer.
Okay.
Let's see. April 2nd. I believe that's correct. The NRC is going to hold their annual meeting at Plymouth Town Hall, which they're going to give the report card, Pilgrim's report card, to the public, and anybody wishing to talk with the NRC invited to go to that meeting.
Dave, I understand. I saw the announcement that was posted in the newspaper or was passed around. So it looks like the NRC is planning on using the same kind of format as they've used in the past I guess, the last year or so, as far as.
They do tweak it occasionally. They may still be tweaking it. So I'm not, I talked to Max, the resident today, and he indicated to me that that's the plan, but it might change. It's subject to change.
Subject to change.
Okay?
Okay.
So,
David, when you said the plan is subject to change, do you mean the location or
no,
the content?
the style of the meeting. I think last year for the first time they did it in kind of a, there were different positions and people could go and talk to them individually instead of the traditional people at the podium and then they have questions and answers and so. I think that's really a question that they ought to answer.
Yeah.
But I think just from the information I received today that's it's plans to be like last year, but it's subject to change.
We could talk about it later. I think the concern, Jeff, I think you even commented to the NRC about the concerns about a year or so ago that it was being run more like a trade show and formatted in exhibit hall as opposed to the more formal structure that has been used in the past there. But I don't know if the NRC ever responded to your concern in that regard.
Do you mind if I ask John a question that's related to this?
Sure.
John, do you know if the NRC ever asked the town whether whether the town had another location that might be better? The reason I ask that is because the new high school is open and it has a big auditorium that would be capable of handling a lot more people.
For the processing of these 1,000?
No, this is for the
for the forum.
For the forum.
I have no idea, Jeff. I attended last year's forum at Town Hall. It was well attended. I would say dozens, not hundreds of individuals.
Yeah.
There might have been 100 or so. We were there. You were there, probably a fair amount.
April 2nd, it's a Tuesday also.
Coming up again.
And that's the Board of Selectmen meeting.
I could ask that, Jeff. I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no
I'm
idea.
curious about it because it would seem that the high school would be a better venue for it.
Yeah, I just remember Matt and I got like 45 minutes alone with Ron Bellamy prior to the meeting up on the 3rd floor. I don't know if he checked in with Melissa, was there some sort of reason to go to Town Hall, but I mean, anything they talked about could have been talked in any building in the community.
To be honest, John, I remember last year.
You were there, right?
I was there. We were crowded in there.
Right.
Then there were some people who had a mic call. Who were
Geez, if I remember correctly, Rich,
and-
I think they split the room.
Yeah, and then I think I wanted to talk
Better if they
too,
didn't
but
split the room.
all of a sudden it got to 6:30, I think, in the Board of Selectmen. Everything had to be cleared because the Board of Selectmen were getting ready for their 7 o'clock meeting, so I wasn't overly enthralled with the format.
Yeah, they had the room
Likewise.
split, I remember that, so that packed the people in there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, so it was
Well, plus it's at 5 o'clock, Richard, and that's
What
Yeah.
time's the meeting?
Yeah.
maximized.
5 to 6:30.
And 3 congressmen have written to the chairman objecting to the format.
Yeah.
Good.
And Mary put a note out, I saw today, or the other day, to that effect too, that concerns expressed about the timing of the.
Markey and
Yeah.
Keating and Kearney.
So I guess we'll just wait and see what happens next week and.
David, sorry. to interrupt.
Yeah,
No, unless there are questions from the committee.
I have a question. David, can you tell me, or maybe you can, how does the new fuel get to the plant?
The
New fuel that you're gonna be putting in and,
Oh, I can tell you, it comes in in steel containers on a flatbed, in kind of like a convoy. They stay together. It's usually 2 trucks, and it's a kind of it's covered, but it's a traditional trailer truck is. This is canvas, and they can actually, once it gets to the truck, they can unlatch it, peel the canvas back, and you have the steel containers with the fuel in it. And as you know, it's not very radioactive. It's not a hazard. it's expensive, and it's, it comes in, and then, of course, when it gets to security, the security has to check all the trucks over in terms of make sure that there's no contraband and all this, and then it's driven in to the plant, it's backed into the truck lock, so it goes right inside the whole trailer, it goes right inside the plant, and then the fuel is uncrated, then there's the crane will come down and it hoists it up, and it goes on a stand where it's inspected and measured and so forth, and then it goes into the spent fuel pool.
Sort of a follow-up question is, when does Entergy own that fuel?
Upon receipt
All
at the plant.
And so-
I mean, it's obviously purchased but you know, there's contracts with insurance and indemnities and all that in terms of the transportation, so.
Okay, thanks.
Rich, a follow-on, so, and once the spent fuel is taken out of the, once it goes in that pool, then it's DOE's responsibility there.
Well,
No, not till
Yeah,
that's a gray
that's
area.
right, it's not.
No, not until it leaves.
we,
It's a fantasy.
well, it's the law, it's not,
No, I'm saying, it wouldn't be nice.
I mean, it's not, it's supposed to be DOE's responsibility, and they've collected a lot of money to deal with it, but it's not happening, obviously.
No, then off-site, then only when it goes off-site.
Yeah, well.
That was the only thing.
Any other questions?
More questions, thank you very much,
Well,
David.
yeah, I would say that, that's enough, yes,
Okay.
answer the question.
Thank you, David.
Anything else?
I failed to mention at the beginning of the meeting that the Manomet Current here is represented by Matt Nadler, and Matt is live streaming tonight's meetings. Everybody smile.
One final thing, there have been press reports that the plant is already shut down and the refueling outage has occurred in the local paper. It's not.
It's not. Okay. Dave, thanks for coming tonight.
It's always a pleasure. Have a nice evening, gentlemen, and let's hope the Celtics do
Yes,
okay.
okay.
Thanks, David.
Good night.
I like that sweater, David, go green.
Oh, yeah. Day after, but my mother'd be proud. She was Irish.
Spring is in 2 days, so green is the right color.
Good night.
Thanks, Dave. Okay. We'll hold off public comment period. We'll get into old business and Town Interface Host Community Initiative. Mr. Grassi, Rich, I believe that you had an opportunity to talk to some of our town officials recently, and I want to give an update on.
Yeah, I did, I met
things
with
like that.
the coalition group on the 6th of March. Primarily to get an update to bring back to the community. I have an update here, I can
Rich,
summarize.
I'm sorry. For the record, can you state which coalition group, just so it's clear?
Well, I don't know what the right term is. It said Host Community Initiative here.
Okay.
With our town officials.
Belinda and Elizabeth.
Yeah, I just want
Yeah.
anybody who's listening not to confuse.
Sure,
what coalition is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just to give you an update, I mean, this is not my update, this is their update that they gave me, and I think, John, you've already seen it too. In October, they had a mailing to all Mark 1 reactor plants, there's about 30 of those. They staggered the mailing to non-1 Mark plants, so they're 30 out of 104, 31 maybe. In November, December, they had follow-up calls to the communities. They had limited response to any letters or phone calls. And I'll give you this, Roger, if you want. The city of Southport, North Carolina, became a member on December 15th. Coordinated directly with their town manager, and the correspondence was through email. They asked to be added to the website, and they support taking on an advocacy role. That's, to my knowledge, the only one right now. Yeah, the next steps they had for January, beginning this year, was the review. They really felt as though they hadn't got the kind of response they wanted, so they reviewed all the contacts and updated as necessary. They produced a spreadsheet of all the plants. And basically, they collected some general information like the local contact, the status, who the governor is, representatives, senators, stuff like that. I made a comment to them that I felt they needed to collect additional information. They only needed to focus on the Mark I reactors. I have a meeting with Belinda on 24, 23, 25 March to go over some of these changes. They had a new mailing targeted to all the communities. They obtained a press contact, public affairs personnel for each community. They obtained Fire Emergency Operations Center personnel contact for each community. They updated the spreadsheet that I just showed you to include more most current information. And Elizabeth Sullivan, who was the
She took over Patrick O'Brien, the assistant. Special assistant
to the town manager, right?
To the assistant. Special assistant. We don't have an assistant town manager.
Anyway.
Something like that.
Elizabeth is doing all the legwork on this, and she's doing a fantastic job, as is Belinda, of course, but Elizabeth is really collecting all the information. So in parallel, they are initiating a mailing to all people, personnel, public relations people at the plants like Jack and Dave and so forth. They've done some research on local media. A few of the plants that they've identified and talked with have indicated that the dry cask storage is planned or it's already underway, such as Fitzpatrick Nuclear Power Plant. Energy, of course, has a couple of plants in which they have transferred spent fuel to dry cask.
Vermont Yankee.
Yeah. Vermont Yankee, right. And in February, they plan on reviewing, or they did plan, I don't know if they completed, reviewing all the contacts, send out a new mailing. I can go on and on. I'll give this to Roger to summarize. But basically, they're not really happy with the response thus far, and we discussed various strategies and how to modify that.
I think, Rich, a couple months ago, I know Paul mentioned that maybe some of the audience should be, counties as opposed to, but I'm sure you've got other ideas too, aside from that, since nothing seemed to happen from that suggestion a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that pretty much is it. I've got that meeting in the latter part of March, and I'll have much more to report after that.
It sounds like they've done a lot of work.
Not a lot of work. I'm glad I volunteered to sort of represent the committee and go to these meetings, because I think an awful lot of effort has been expended, and I just think that with more of a group participation, we can talk about strategy and get it more focused, I think.
Okay. And thanks we got certainly enough topics that could be attended to for everybody to stay busy, and then some.
That's
over
for
the
sure.
years. So thanks for the update. Jim, any more on pilot? Or I know last month you were saying that we didn't get anything resolved.
There was a meeting last Thursday at 1 o'clock on the pilot, numerous issues around the plant, but Matt, Belinda, and Kenny attended. Sergio and myself did not. But obviously, we've been updated since then. I think you're on the verge of.
Getting close.
I think it's going to be relatively soon where something is
Do you
going
think
to be
it'd be
announced.
before town meeting as opposed to after?
Today's.
Today's.
It could be.
Okay.
It could be, Rich. I don't think it's going to be anything earth-shattering. I'll have more to say when it's announced.
I promise.
I promise, Jeff.
If it happens, this will be the last snow we're getting this week.
Yeah.
Okay?
So nothing earth-shattering, but
Rich,
close.
Roger, don't put that in writing. I didn't say that. I can't control that. Okay. Paul also had avenues to address freeing up federal funding for accelerating the spend nuclear fuel storage.
That goes right along with the
Yeah,
host community initiative thing.
yeah,
That's part of one of the main objectives, so, the goal of the initiative is still to free up some federal money. Senator Keating has indicated that, he wants 100 communities, or 100 people, participants, in order for him to bring forth a bill that would release the money. With only 2 right now.
Did you say Senator, did you mean Congressman Keating?
I just promoted him.
All right, I just want to make sure we're talking about the same guy. Because there is a Senator Keating
Well,
from another state.
the only thing that's in my mind right now,
I
all
could be
these
wrong.
people running for senator, so,
Yeah.
I thought something happened while it was.
yeah.
Well,
Congressman Keating.
Okay.
I want to just diverge a moment. Mary, you very recently attended by invitation an annual NRC forum. You went down with Gordon Thompson and gave an invited presentation on this topic. You had some, I call it novel ideas in terms of where the monies could come from or not come from, and I was wondering if you could give a brief update on how that went, how the NRC audience reacted or didn't react at this point, and to tie it into the school.
Okay, last week was the annual Regulatory Information Conference that NRC has for national and international people. And this year they decided to have, instead of simply NRC people and industry people and their experts on the panel, 2 of the panels over the 3-day period would have public, split the public. And so Gordon Thompson and I were invited to be the 2 of the 4, with 2 NRC people, on expedited transfers and fuel. Gordon, and I can send you the slides, talked about vulnerability and consequence of spent fuel storage in the pool, the need for expedited transfer, and I was talking about costs and timing. And in that, I outlined 3 options. That is clear the reason there has not been expedited transfer today is money. That the industry does not want to pay out of their operating budget to put it into dry cash, but rather would want to defer the cost to when they cease operations, and then can dip into funds that have been set aside.
For
And-
decommissioning.
Yeah, and the
I got
funds,
some,
For
the funds that have been set aside. So then I looked at the 3 options. One option would be industry would decide for expedited transfer, and the probability is 0. And that was agreed because also I had a private meeting with the chairman before that was 0. The second option was the Nuclear Waste Policy Act that you're discussing in 2 ways. That either the Nuclear Waste Policy Act be amended to allow that a portion of the funds be able to be spent for during operations. Another option would be a 1/10 of a cent would be added so that there would be monies then to use it on site. So it'd be getting more money in the split. The likelihood of that happening, 0. That was after detailed discussions with the House, with Congress, and with the Senate. They said there is absolutely no interest, despite the fact of Ron Wyden and Feinstein in the Senate. The reason being that they're under considerable pressure to find an off-site solution, particularly from reactors that are currently not operating, and more important, because of the lack of economic competitiveness with natural gas, there are more reactors like Wisconsin and Florida that are closing. So the push is there, not the solution or problem during operations. So then the third option, and really the final option when you get right down to it, is use of the decommissioning trust fund during operations. There is a precedent for that. They're in the regulations, and I have it cited in what I handed out to you, allows under certain circumstances using the decommissioning trust fund money during operations for dry cask storage on site, because A, logically, it's going to be spent one way or another. The question is, when are you going to dry cask? And although maybe my reputation has been that I don't compromise, I do believe in negotiation, and everybody gives and everybody takes. And using the decommissioning trust fund, which, by the way, Pilgrim had applied in 2008 and did receive some of the decommissioning trust fund, and I have sent a FOIA requesting the status across the industry, and I should hear from that fairly soon. What's in it for everybody? For the public, obviously, it's a reduction of risk to get a lot of that fuel out. For NRC, it would allow them to do the right thing. They're doing this post-Fukushima recommendations to provide an order, but at the same time, allow industry not to have to accept the pain.
But,
And
Mary.
let me go further.
Go ahead.
And for industry, there's a lot to gain. A lot to gain in the sense that they already have to pay those who have had an extension of their license or reached maximum capacity for the dry gas and the pool. So that's money out of the operating budget. They also have to pay for litigation and lobbying against NRC's piddling requirements for increased safety, such as criticality alarms. Oyster Creek had to pay $65,000 recently for a criticality alarm in the pool, and for measuring more frequently the water because the Poraflex is degrading across the board. So that would be out of the way. They would also be out of the way for litigation and in the hopes of getting DOE funds. Okay, so that's across the board. Taxpayers and the federal government would have a huge advantage because the DOE litigation would be moot. And so I'm just throwing it out, that's a possibility. There's a negative. The blowback from the public would be, cripes, the decommissioning trust fund already is inadequate, and so why take from it for this case? The industry's blowback argument would be, hey, wait a minute, okay, we take from it,
Right.
but then NRC will see every 2 years when we give our decommissioning trust fund report, which is, this one's due March 31st, and then they'll nail us for not having enough. But the question is, there is a need when operations cease for two things to happen. One is decommission cleanup, and the other is to deal with the spent fuel. And so, put it in dry cask so there is an oxide solution. So the question really becomes when. When is this going to happen? It's going to have to happen. And the issue also is the costs of the cask, the costs of the manual labor, and all the associated costs are likely to increase in 10 to 30 years. One can argue how much are the investments going to
Right.
increase.
Right.
I think you could reasonably argue it could be a wash. Nobody knows.
Well, I think there are a lot of washes in this.
Yeah, and-
Number two, when decommissioning a certain amount of that money would have been used to decommission the containment and the spent fuel anyway.
Mhm. That's the point.
Okay.
So the question is
Number
when.
one. Number two is, 150 million was spent by Entergy
Mhm.
ostensibly to build the pad and put the fuel so that they can refuel, they'll take the spent fuel, the 1970 fuel out and put it in the dry cask. That 150 million, I asked the question and I was told that by Jack that they are going to bill the NRC for that money.
They can't bill them.
Other communities have and they haven't gotten the money.
The question is, in reality, where is that money coming from? Is it coming from the
Not from
decommissioning?
It must be coming from
Is it
decommissioning.
coming from the decommissioning
It
trust
must be
fund?
coming from
That's why I
decommissioning.
sent a FOIA.
That's why they can't, that's right. But if
Send a
it was
FOIA.
coming from operating, and this is
No,
my
it's not
point.
coming from our.
If I'm,
Excuse me, I just want to say that,
well, let me finish. If I'm an Entergy official, I'm sitting there with 300 million a year, and I have to build a dry cask storage, and I look at taking 150 million, I'm not gonna take it out of the operating budget. I'm gonna take it out of decommissioning. Number one, if I take it out of the operating budget or profits, when I bill back to the NRC, I'm gonna bill back a percentage, because if I invested that 150 million at the time I was considering doing the dry cask, that's just money that's called pure risk. The money's not making money,
Mhm.
right? So if I bill back the government, I'm gonna get a percentage potentially from the government for the time that I spent that money until they resupply my money. And that's gonna be just like investing it.
Well, I did ask the chairman's office that question, and the answer was, no, they don't bill the NRC.
Well, the other communities have, and I'm sorry.
that's
Richard.
okay, I was just
No,
going to
I'm
say
just,
that
I'm just
the
asking,
last
that's what
things
the
I,
response, they could have been wrong.
I think the third option is the best option.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Because everybody gets something.
Yeah. And it's sooner.
I just,
Because I think it's very important to point out, at least from my perspective right now, is that Entergy plans on taking the spent fuel out of and putting it in dry cask only to accommodate the refueling.
I know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that. I'm trying to think of a
It's a
way
zero-sum game.
to expedite it. They aren't gonna pay for it, I'm a grown-up.
Right.
NRC is not going to require them, order them to do so, because they aren't even willing to order the filter. That will be publicly
That's
announced.
it.
I was going to.
That'll be
that-
publicly
I was
announced,
going to-
because it costs money.
I was going to add that,
So,
It should be-
deal with it.
Really good.
Mary
Thank you
Rich.
for that information.
okay.
Good.
Thank you. I was going to add that where the money's coming from should be a matter of public record, because certainly over the last year or so, I've circulated from some like power trade journals and magazines, some of the lawsuits that were going on, utilities against NRC or DOE regarding the spent fuel issue, and there were settlements and monies were provided to the utilities. That I think there was one out in Kansas, there was one other one, I forget where. So I assume, you know,
Entergy soon.
Pardon?
Entergy soon got
so,
money.
so where the money came from the federal government, I assume that would, I don't know off the top of my head, but I assume would be a matter of
No, that was for our
public
money.
record. Well, our money, but which department issued our money, you know, or how it got out.
I did ask the chairman
Yeah.
in the private meeting about the issue, when they have the decommissioning trust fund analyses, which will be out, as I said, March 31st. That's Easter, that's ridiculous, will be out at the end of the month.
Mhm.
That they should include in that report, and she seemed happy about that thought, both how much they've already gotten from the decommissioning trust fund, what they spent it for, and also how much they've gotten out of DOE suits and what they spent it for. Because then that would adjust the projection of how much spent fuel is gonna cost, because that's how it's arranged. How much cleanup is gonna cost, how much is they have now, how much they project. And NRC last for 12 was saying 1.34% increase from investments.
Mary, I had two follow-on questions related to this. I guess the first is that following your and Dr. Thompson's presentations, did you get any sense from the NRC top brass there as far as how they felt or didn't feel one way or another as far as your...
Well, they had to stay an extra hour and a half, so I think
I
it
guess
couldn't
that's
have been all that bad.
on the government's nickel.
And I think it was positively, they hadn't, the chairman hadn't thought of it.
Mhm.
And I can only speak for the chairman because we had a face-to-face before.
Okay, good.
But, so the rest of the people sitting there, I had no idea.
The second question I had is last month, Meg Sheehan was also attending our NMC meeting, and she alerted us to the fact that the re-review the Waste Confidence Rule, EIS, would not include involve plants that have already received their license or relicense. And Meg was kind enough to subsequently forward to our committee the transcripts that took place when you and she were participating in
There's
the...
another meeting this Wednesday that's open to the public.
Okay, let's come back to that in a moment. I guess it was last November,
Something like
where there was a scoping meeting for a federal EIS scoping meeting for the EIS that's going to be done to revisit the Waste Confidence Rule. Did this come up at all when you were down there for this?
No,
Because the
but
concern...
the reality is they have a period of time to do what the Fifth Circuit required, but it's not backdated.
So whatever decision, it's going to be a generic EIS, so whatever
Going
decisions
forward.
going forward, so whatever decisions are rendered for more likely, so will be more relevant for existing plants that have spent nuclear fuel being stored as opposed to the new plants that will still have to comply. That I can only assume at the moment that there would hopefully be a trickle down to those existing plants that have already received their relicense. So whatever is good for the goose for the existing plants
Probably
will
not.
apply
It
to
would
the
be any
gander.
litigation going forward, and as opposed to litigation dealing with spent fuel such as the Attorney General is now involved in. The NRC had argued that you couldn't bring spent fuel forward in anything because we'd already generically decided it was safe either in the pool or in dry gas.
So for example,
But if they change that if there's litigation going forward, maybe the Attorney General can make use of it.
let me rephrase my question. Let's assume, based on the generic EIS outcome, that NRC says, okay, those plants that are about to receive the relicense have to do A, B, C, and D regarding their spent nuclear fuel.
It was just like, remember I brought forward the leaks from various pipes?
Mhm.
And then they decided a month before the trial, the hearing, that leaks were not part of license renewal. They were daily operations. The only thing that mattered was how big the leak. Then NRC changed the regulations saying now this can be brought forward in license renewal. But so sad, too bad. That doesn't mean you or anybody else who has been in the process.
So
So
it
it's
remains,
not back.
it basically remains to be seen what will happen in the
Mhm.
future regarding those
Yeah.
Pilgrim or any other plants that have received their license that have to deal with
Yeah.
spent nuclear fuel. I would just hope that whatever the outcome of the EIS in terms of any safety related or technical aspects that would be applied to those plants that are about to be relicensed, or new plants would also be considered or reconsidered for
It's
those
not
plants that
gonna
have.
be reconsidered. That wasn't part of the directive from
Well,
the fifth.
I understand, but I'm just saying that,
It would be nice, there are a lot of things.
but it's not, wouldn't be the first time the NRC has said, okay, we're gonna have an order like with Fukushima, post-Fukushima, that we're gonna require all existing plants to do A, B, C, and D. So that's
In
basically where
your
I'm coming from.
thinking, it could potentially affect how they look at the recommendation for expedited transfer.
Okay.
And
Does anyone else have?
Can I
any-
ask a
Sure.
question?
Sure,
Mary?
oh, absolutely.
Thank you. Mary, in your opinion, on this excellent report that you have here, on option 2, Congress amends the Nuclear Waste Policy Act that is now restricted to creating a permanent
Repository. Should have
repository.
said that. Hope it did.
And all your numbers are correct here, the 7 billion estimated to all that kind of stuff. If option number 3 becomes, options 1 and 2 are probably 0, in your opinion, right? And option 3
That's
is greater than
that's
0.
my opinion in talking to people.
If that's the case, then isn't this initiative that we've started here
Well,
something that has no end? In other words, if the initiative
there's
is to get the
nothing-
money from
nuclear waste
the
policy,
act,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
Waste Policy Act, right? So if that you heard from a meeting down there that money is not going to be, that
Well,
still-
that's the current Congress, but there is no harm in pushing it for bringing the issue out there. Do I think it has any likelihood of passing? No.
No, I don't either.
No.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, that's just the way Congress is, and that's
Right.
where the lobbyists are. When you look at it, if you're a Connecticut Yankee, Maine Yankee, if you're Yankee Row, if you're Wisconsin just dropping, maybe Fitzpatrick's gonna drop, you want the stuff the hell out of there
That's right.
because it's costing you money.
Mhm.
And everybody's thinking that one of these older reactors, particularly merchant
Mhm.
plants,
Very good, thanks.
Jeff, you have a question?
Hey, Mary,
hate to be a sourpuss, but,
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. That was my
oh, okay.
conclusion from this is kind of a waste.
Mary, can you send this to me electronically? As
Sure.
well as the slides, and I'll.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Here, you could also dumb the slides down to PowerPoint
Fucking
2000,
Right?
PowerPoint 2000 rather than the
Paul
higher version that's like.
Oh.
wants to use
Thanks.
another source of funds, another trust fund. What's
Thanks, Mary.
the pros and cons of Paul's position versus Mary's position?
That's a good question. I'm not that, the Nuclear Waste Policy Act or the Nuclear Waste Act is the act that I think the initiative is going. There are $30 billion in funds in that, stored up in that pool right now. I don't know what Paul is talking about. You said Paul?
Right.
I don't recall what Paul is talking about, being an alternative source of funds. I'm not familiar with that.
And
No,
then,
I mean, they're looking for, I think the leaning is a interim, storage site. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
As opposed to current.
but I thought what Paul was saying at the last couple of meetings was that rather than using the decommissioning funds, that there was this other fund that the ratepayers are paying into,
Yeah, the Nuclear Waste Policy Act.
and that to use this money from that fund for the same purpose that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's all for the same purpose. My question was, which option has the greatest
Right.
probability of happening?
And that was 0.
The Nuclear Waste Policy Act.
You're just saying because
Everyone
political
has,
considerations are that that's just not gonna happen.
yes. It is certainly with the current Congress and certainly with the lobbying efforts. I mean, I'd feel that way if I owned a reactor.
Mhm.
But, that doesn't, I don't have a crystal ball. certainly very, call the Congress people yourselves.
How, I mean, I want just one. How, there's an increasing pressure on the nuclear industry right now by gas, the rising popularity and availability of gas.
Yep. Washington Post had a
And
big
they're
article.
finding more and more shale deposits, and they're, fracking is something that they're really stepping up on now. And the balance between, the dependence on offshore oil versus the use of natural gas that's inherent to the United States. I mean, the balance is shifting dramatically.
Exactly.
And nuclear power is becoming less of a right. How do you see that pressure working out over the next 5 to 10 years?
I joined.
If assuming that gas is going to continue to
Okay,
become
I
prominent.
joined, and I'll send it to you. I think I did, I can't remember. A 2.206 enforcement petition with a group around Fitzpatrick, Vermont Yankee, and Pilgrim, which are Entergy's 3. Fitzpatrick and Vermont Yankee, OMB gave a going down the tubes. And the question with the Pilgrim was economically viable at all.
That was a UBS study.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. I was very interested.
Yeah, that was great. And Washington Post came out on March 11th, which is pretty funny because I was at the RIC at the time, with the same front page story, saying the same thing. So what does that mean? It's bad news for safety.
True.
It's bad news for safety,
That's right.
which was
I
the
agree
point,
with that.
which was the point of the enforcement petition.
I agree with that.
Which is not going to go anywhere, just highlighting it.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of references in it that provide the information. It's not doing well competitively. Wisconsin didn't close up, just
So
Florida, they canceled new ones.
would you agree that the closer we are to actually getting to those decommissioning funds, the better off we'll be? Getting that spent
Well,
fuel storage
it's going to
out?
work 2 ways. One way it'll work is decreasing some public interest groups across the country in supporting this concept, because they'll say, oh, Christ, they're going to be closing up, and we want all the money for for cleanup. And when that's what we're concerned, we don't want any money out of there. We want more to clean up, which they don't seem to get that they're separate issues. At the same time, I think the reactor operators are so is Fitzpatrick, so is Vermont. When the
By
money,
design, right?
the money's gone, they're gone.
Yep.
So there's not enough in the decommissioning fund, so what?
Jim, you had a question, a comment?
At the time when Yucca Mountain was supposed to be a viable solution, wasn't it going to be necessary to put this fuel into dry cask storage just to transmit it out there?
Oh, yeah, it has to go in dry cask.
Okay, where are those funds coming from?
Where?
Yeah.
That's supposedly going to be,
Federal government.
no, it's not the federal.
Well, the federal government was was signed up for it.
The federal government does not take ownership until it leaves the property, and it has to be properly dressed.
But I'm saying that the federal government is taking that responsibility.
Once it leaves the property,
Correct.
it belongs to the licensee
Right,
on site.
right.
They have to get it dressed in casks that are
They have to get it into Guytrans
They have to-
storage.
pay for it. So
Right.
therefore, when you see their decommissioning plan every 2 years that they have to submit, they have how much it's going to cost to clean up, how much it's going to cost to dress the fuel,
Exactly.
But to
to
address,
get it ready in casks that
Right.
are transportable to go.
Right.
Once it crosses the property line, then
It's
it's
a
a
government's
federal
property.
government.
Would Savannah be a temporary site?
No,
Okay.
it's a temporary site for the waste that were taken from overseas.
no, it's just a question in terms of
That's
What-
good news, isn't it?
what you need to do to address the spent fuel to transport
You
it.
have to get it in dry casks, and there are portable casks.
Are those the same casks that transportable? I understand. it's a
They're not
dry
gonna store the fuel in some other container when they go to Yucca Mountain or some other site. They're gonna store them in the dry cask they receive from the plant.
One would hope.
Yeah,
in.
Hi, John.
Jeff, you look great.
Thank you, sir.
Hi.
John, I was just saying that Paul Smith had a personal matter happen suddenly at home, nothing health-wise or anything, but he's
Okay.
got to tend to the business, so he has to run the meeting tonight, since Jeff just got back to it and he's been away.
Sure.
So we'll make it very short.
Oh,
All right, yeah, I know.
I'll be a
See,
person,
that email I sent out the other day was a little tongue in cheek, but it wasn't.
I'll be a person of very.
I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see it.
No,
Huh?
I don't think I.
Well, maybe only Paul saw it.
I think Paul's, yeah.
Okay, so. Heat Celtics tonight at 8 o'clock, so,
Is it?
Huh?
Really?
yes.
Yeah, playing Heat, Miami Heat.
I'm hoping that Kevin Garnett's playing and there might be a game.
If I was home, I wouldn't get to watch it. My wife's watching the dancing show, whatever, with the gymnast. So I guess we could start our meeting, and it's convened.
Yeah.
I'll follow Paul's agenda here, but there's some developments that have taken place since he put this out. That'll be part of our discussion tonight. And